All right, finally, this is the last round of the Chicago Open. Another legendary game. Round 7, I had, what? I don't remember. I had some sort of amount of points going into this round. I was playing the number 7, maybe the number 6. I played, or 7 or 8 or 6 or 7 or something like that. I played a 2160 rated 10-year-old. He was pretty intense. He kept like staring at me, like he kept trying to, I guess he was trying to intimidate me, but he was like 10 years old, so it was like, okay. But I had white, which means a few things. It means I have to play the King's Indian attack, which is fine. I've had like quite a successful run with it in this tournament. Yeah, he mean mugged me. He would just like stare at me, and like, I don't know, it doesn't work on me anymore. That shit used to work on me so well, but it's like, okay, like, it says more about you than me. Like, if you feel the need to do that, you do what you need to do to get through the day. Okay, so we go e4, that's our move order. He goes c5, knight f3, e6, and then it's like, ha, joke's on you. I'm lame. Hello, Rashangle. Rage Angel. Let me give you a shout out. Thank you for the raid. Rage Angel. No 225 anymore. Wow. It's the end of the era. So we go d3 because we're lame and stupid, and we're going to put the bishop on g2. But we're not going to get like any sort of open Sicilian against the 2150 rated child. It's just not going to happen. Or he goes g6, and it's like, that's usually not what you do, but whatever. g3. Bishop g7, bishop g2, knight to e7. So, okay, we need to talk about a few things. As we discussed, the only like structure I'm comfortable / familiar with is like with the pawn on e6, a pawn on d5, where usually there's a knight on f6, I play e5, cut the board in half, and then I do my stupid shit, and I put the knight on h2, and then g4, and then h6. But here, even if he does get d5 in, e5 makes less sense when the knight is not on f6. In fact, maybe it helps him in some cases. It's like, I didn't know, and I was kind of uncomfortable. I just went with castling because castling is almost always good. I'm good at chess. And I develop my horsey into the center. He does the same. And I go rook e1. So, I don't have a whole lot to say about rook e1. Seems like it could be useful. Maybe I'll put the knight here. Maybe I won't. I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just sort of playing King's Indian attack moves. He goes d6. I go knight f1. He goes e5. And I'm not super happy here. Because none of my ideas make sense here anymore, because when you only look at one idea for one structure, if your opponent just puts their pawns in a different way, then you don't know what you're doing. Why did I block the bishop? Because, I don't know. I'm an idiot, I guess. Okay, well, we go bishop g5, and I don't know. I gotta develop my pieces somehow. h6, I go back to d2. Bishop e6. Knight e3, f5. And here is where I start to, Host Mahogi and I were having a discussion about this, where you don't really have to have a real chess position. You can even be down a pawn and just, like, be worse. There's still, like, a chess game to be played. So I'm kind of fumbling around in the dark, just waiting to get a chess position. And I end up just getting, like, a really bad one. But an interesting one. And by interesting, I'm going to get attacked. So I'm not going to defend anything I did. This was, like, atrocious. This was really bad. But at least now I can, like, I have, like, an aim. And my aim is to not get checkmated. So we go king h1. Opponent goes queen d7. Aiming for those light squares. Now, if we do some long-term exercises, what is a way that this game will end up in my favor? What are some things I can do? Here's what I thought. I first looked at the pawn structure. I am down a pawn. But If this pawn, for example, was like here instead of here, this would not be a bad pawn structure for me at all, because it would be a backward pawn on a semi-open file, and I would have like a really excellent knight in the center on an outpost. And then this bishop, like, who cares? So like, I only need to change a few things about this awful position to make it playable. They're really difficult things to change, and he can just not comply, and then I resign, which is fine. Like, if I lose, I lose. That's the whole attitude. Checkmate me if you want to, but like, you know, you have to do it. So if I trade the light-squared bishops somehow, and I get a pawn here, I'm doing great. So naturally, bishop e4 is what I did. And he should not take this. I feel like I'm gonna be okay. He took it, and I was very happy. He shouldn't be doing that. He should just do something else. Like, I don't know what. Like, probably just takes and bishop g4. This is almost resignable. But bear with me, okay? Like this is the system. You get a losing position out of the opening, and then you just kind of sit there for a while. And then maybe you get a playable position. Or you can put in the time when you're not playing and like study openings, but I didn't do that. So this is the best I can do, basically. Does that make sense? You don't care. So he took on e4. I played d takes e4. And I'm not even that unhappy. Like, my knight's okay. The light squares feel like less of a problem without his light squared bishop. I have a good knight. Long term, if his attack doesn't succeed, I could actually see a situation where my pawn structure is actually better. My pieces are actually better. But of course, like, that would require some mistakes from my opponent. But what are you gonna do? So he goes queen h3. I go rook g1. Knight d4. Knight d4 maybe was premature, because I'm able to just play c3 and kick him backward. It's hard to see an exact path. Like, I guess he needs to be able to play this move to get the knight in. Self-service, if you're still in the chat, maybe we can use your principle here. If the only way to get this knight active really is to play g4, why not just play g4 ourselves? Kind of trapping the queen in here, stopping the pawns where they are. If he plays f3, I go rook g3. I'm like not worried about this. I haven't thought about it in depth. Like, the knight can come back to e3 now, and the pawn is defended. Maybe I can take, and like I'm soliding up. I'm not gonna get attacked so easily. This is also like a common idea in, like, I want to say the dragon with black, where you like play g5 and oftentimes you actually sacrifice the pawn to ward off an attack, and that's like a different situation, but still slightly similar. So I go g4. My opponent plays king f7. He wants to get the rooks in. It's time to switch to the regular webcam. What are you gonna do? At least if the good camera is on long enough so that like YouTube people are like hooked by the time that it turns off, like, who cares? Long term, how does my opponent kill me? What's the long-term plan here? And how do I avoid that? My long-term plan was to lock all of this shit up and trade the queens, right? That makes a lot of sense. In an endgame scenario, I've already established I don't even think this is that bad. Like, this bishop can be fixed. Like, after f3, like, if the queens are off, like, I could bring it over here. I could play b4. I mean, maybe not. But, like, I could come up with something. This knight is saving the day. And again, like, probably the easiest plan in a long-term scenario would just be doubling and playing against this pawn. And this bishop is like a garbage boy. Good description. All right, so I go f3. h5. Queen f1. Ah! Spoilers. I go queen f1. I want to trade the queens. Obviously, if he just trades, like, everything's fine. I don't know what I guess I take with this one. And then the question is, like, well, fine is a complicated term. It's not, I'm not doing great yet, but, like, I'm not gonna, these freeze frames should be used in YouTube thumbnails. Garbage boy, yes, yes. Like, I'm still gonna, just because the camera's over here now, just because the queens are out, that doesn't mean I'm not getting attacked, but, like, it makes me feel safer. Okay, so I'm like, it's, trade the queens. So he takes on g4. Obviously, if I take, that's stupid. So I go rook takes g4. He goes rook h8. And I can trade the queens here, but then it becomes an issue of how actually to defend this pawn. Because if I if I defend with the king, rook a to h8 already comes in, and then this is forced. And this is, like, to me, a concept of, like, in attacking, just like attacking the weakest point, you can also attack the most defended point, and then this rook is, like, trapped. So essentially I'm playing without these pieces. I mean, I guess you could say he's also doing stuff, but my point is, now that all my pieces are stupid and useless over here, he can, like, start to do things on the queen side, I think. I guess. So I'm not gonna, like, do him all those favors. I'm gonna go queen g2, and I'm gonna be like, okay, like, if that's gonna happen, like, maybe I'll at least be up one tempo in that situation. He probably should trade the queens. I don't know. He goes rook h6, which is also fine. I go rook f1 to over-defend the pawn. Rook h8. Rook f2. Alright. The thought process right now, cam 1, yeah, is to survive the attack. I honestly wasn't super worried at any point in this game that I was gonna get checkmated. I was more worried about, like, him winning some concept and then the endgame being bad for me. Let me check the time situation. This is move 28. I don't know if other people find this interesting, but I do. So white, me, has 41 minutes here. Opponent has 60 minutes. Opponent didn't spend very much time in this game. Okay, so rook f2. He goes queen h5. And I'm assuming the point is this. Is this the point? I don't know. And now how do I make an improvement? Because yes, all of my pieces are basically just stuck here, preventing him from killing me on either h2 or, like, breaking everything open. This knight is, like, pretty much as good as it's gonna get unless, you know, something changes. How can I improve a piece here? This is, like, my worst piece. It's not doing anything. So I just rearrange the boy. I just go bishop e1. And then maybe I'll put this rook here where... Okay, I'm not, like, exactly improving this piece. Like, maybe slightly. But I definitely am improving this one. Having it sit on a semi-open file and doing this stupid job. Like, at least it's... You know, like, that's the thought process, at least. Like, maybe... Just teeny tiny improvements build up over time. Just like in life, you know? You don't always have to be doing it 100%, as long as you're trying. Alright. Bishop f6, and now he's, I don't know. He's doing something. It was none of my concern. I'm just gonna keep doing my stuff. I have 35 minutes now, and he has 56. That's little kid. He goes bishop d8. I'm unclear exactly what the point of this was. Maybe, I don't know. Hard to say. He probably had some long-term idea. Maybe the chat can point it out. Okay, so I improved this piece. This piece, again, like, is doing kind of everything it can. This guy's just sort of stuck. What now? Chat cannot point it out? Are you sure? Sometimes there's good people in the chat. Like, Hikaru was here earlier, allegedly. Definitely wasn't one of, like, a mod logged in. Boxing the knight out? Boxing the knight out. Oh, do you mean, like, opposing my knight with the, like... If anything, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I don't feel super threatened by this. Isn't there a danger that the knight could attack rook on g4 at some point? Okay, but how? Like, here, here, here? I mean, worst case I take, and like this is a thing. I can try to like do this now also. Like thinking. Like I went king g1. Just to relieve a little bit of pressure, and in some cases, like if he leaves the H file, I don't know, like I can do some wiggling around, maybe escape. This is more just like a alright, you figure it out sort of move. It was knight f8. Where's the knight going? Probably here, right? Maybe? I don't remember. And now I play the move queen to f1. I'm doing a lot of like wiggling around. So there were a lot of like cool nuances going on that I don't remember, but they were there. So now I'm going to put the rook here, which I couldn't do previously for some reason. Let's go back. Let's find out why I couldn't do that previously. I don't know. I think I was just doing other stuff. Who knows? Analyze your games like at least just a week after you play them, not 3 months. I'm such an idiot. Sorry, but like, come on. Like, I have excuses, but there's no excuse. There's really no excuse for me being the way that I am. All right, queen f1, counterplay, rook g1. You know, sure, they had some queen sack lines. Sure, yeah, maybe that's what it was. I forget. Are you allowed to write your thoughts during the games? You're not, actually. That counts as note-taking, and it is not legal. Who got in trouble for doing that? Was it Wesley? I think Wesley So got in trouble for that. He was just... But he wasn't, like, taking notes about the game. He was, like, writing himself words of encouragement, which is very Wesley-coded. But, alright, he goes queen h3, and he's like, alright, fuck you. I can go rook d to g2 now. But I opted for queen d3. This might have been a mistake. I don't remember. Basically what I'm doing is I'm trying to get my lower value pieces to be defenders so I can use my higher value pieces to actually make counterplay. That's what I was thinking during the game, and there was nuance to it. I don't remember exactly everything I was thinking about. Wesley got banned by a Covian. Oh, no, you're allowed to do that. And you actually should do that. You should write down the time that your moves were made, because if there is a malfunction with the clock, for example, then you have a record of how to reset the clock. Like, you should write down the clock times. Like, it's also good for your analysis because you can see like where you spend too much time or not enough time. I think it's often actually more telling like where you just spend way too much time on things. I mean, also when you don't spend enough, but so you can get like clues and shit from how much time you spend on things. This is analysis of a classical game that I played against the 2150 rated child, 10-year-old. So I write them down like after like move 5. Like if we're playing a theoretical opening, I probably won't write down the times for the first like 10 moves. But like here I waited till move 5 to write down times. I don't know if you can see it or not. But because that's where we start to think, I suppose. But then after that I write it on every move. Alright, so knight g6. The boy's coming in. Rook g2. King f8. The point of king f8 is probably the smart one. I think he wants to play the move c4 without there being tactics on his king, and the reason he would want to play c4 is to deflect my queen away from the f3 pawn. I go bishop f2, and mayhaps it's time to even go king f1, bishop g1, and then like there's pins going on for the time being, but I might be able to run my king somewhere safer and have my bishop defend the pawn, and at that point he's really never gonna win that pawn. And then I can just kind of run away from the attack. So that was like, that's the point. Rook h4. My opponent is giving me an exchange, which is usually a pretty scary thing. I couldn't find a reason not to. Like, I honestly didn't. I thought his attack was pretty much over in the first place, and he was like clinging on at this point. So I'm gonna make sure I'm right here. I feel like I didn't spend that much. So I had 18 minutes here. He played Rook H4 and had 50 minutes. I spent wait, what? Did I not take? Oh, I did take. I spent 5 minutes and I took. So now I'm down to 13 minutes. He has 47, but we're nearing move 40. So I'm going to get some time back. He plays knight takes h4. I go rook f2. And his point is like, maybe I'm going to get overworked, but honestly, how? He goes c4. And I kind of overthought this maybe. I would love to be able to play the move queen f1. Can anyone tell me why this is a really stupid move to make? Yeah. Then knight f3 works. I'm just getting checkmated. Because if I take, this is mate. If I go here, I think, yeah, like this is like a cool rook mate. So that mate I saw that mate. That the camera's here now. So the question is where to put my queen. I have, I think, three like reasonable options. There's this, there's this, there's this. So the things going on in the position are the semi-open file. I'd like to keep my queen there if I can. Might be useful to either keep this pawn defended, or keep this pawn attacked. So I have to choose between like a combination of having this pawn attacked and this one defended, this pawn attacked and this one defended, or like if I go here, then we have three things going on, but the semi-open file is no longer like a source of counterplay. And I played the move queen e2, which is second best. For those reasons, it does make sense. It like feels the most defensively sound. But after b5, I don't really have, the camera's not here. I don't really have counterplay now. And so I think that the way to make the improvement, like this move, it's like plus 0.6 for white, and the best move, queen d1, it's like 0.7. And the way that I like to justify this to myself, it's very similar, but it keeps an ounce of counterplay in the position, potentially. Like, he'll still probably play b5, but I just think that this is maybe a slightly more active position for my queen, but this is like definitely trying to keep it solid. I still don't really see how I'm going to win, even though I'm up material at this point. Opponent goes b5. And okay, so it's move like 38, right? Yeah. I have like 5 minutes left, and I'm kind of starting to panic. I'm not even sure what I thought the threat was exactly, but I was having trouble finding a move that didn't weaken something. So I opted to just sack the exchange back, which was unnecessary, but like clearly an emotional decision based on like where we are. Like, I need to make 2 moves before I get time control. So I make an emotional decision because I'm feeling stressed. I'm like, maybe he's coming alive over here. I can't really move any of my pieces very well. The best move is king h1, so it's like, that's hard. Queen d2 hangs knight f3. Oh, it does. Okay. Yeah, so it was only between the light squares. I had to defend f3. Well, but okay, like my point still stands, is like that's the slight difference, is that this one gets to stay. Sometimes I do a dumb, but you know what happens. All right, anyways, I go here. At least I saw it in the game. That counts for something. Teehee. So I make an emotional decision. Rook takes h4, rook takes h4, and I'm like, please trade the queens with me. You are a child. I will be okay in the endgame. And he says no, which is probably what he should do. I go rook g2. Move 40. Queen f1 was my 40th move, so I probably got up and like walked away and drank some water at that point to try to relax. And this is a good point to reevaluate because there are like a lot of changes and trades and no pawn structure changes exactly, but this would be a great place to reevaluate. So I'm down a pawn. I'm no longer up material. I'm down a pawn, but the pawn structure is like kind of an interesting one. Clearly my knight should be superior to the bishop in most cases. He has like this backward pawn, they're all on dark squares. The knight is controlling every square the bishop can go to. The position is semi-closed and the knight is on an outpost. However, he has this annoying like ability to create a pass pawn, and that's like the biggest issue here. So rook g2 is like, you know, pretty reasonable. He goes g4. I couldn't really prevent this. I go queen to e2. And I have like an idea in mind. Taking, I think, would be, I don't know, probably okay, but I just feel super passive there. I would prefer for him to take, leaving my queen on f3, which at first glance looks bad because of rook h3, but I had something prepared. So rook h3, it's like oddly reminiscent of my game with Griffin. Like with the pawn wanting to come to f3 and attack me, and then the rook on h3. It's kind of funny. But here I have rook g3, which is like a very nice, not save, but like resource. Because this pawn is pinned. So after rook takes g3, h takes g3, he's really not getting his passed pawn anymore. He tries one more thing. It's looking like kind of bad because this is pinned now and he's attacking it twice. I can't approach very easily. And this move, there's bishop b6 maybe? No, there's not. There's a knight there. I remember there being something wrong with this, but I don't remember. But thankfully I have queen g2 attacking the queen. And so I'm saying like either go back and then it's the same situation, or this is not a recording. Well, unless you're watching on YouTube, then it is a recording. But if he takes, like, or in some scenario takes this way, whatever, takes, this pawn's really, really difficult to defend. The only way to defend it is to put the bishop here, which is a pretty bad square. Okay, so somehow we fought our way out of that, like, miserable position where you're getting attacked for, like, 3 hours straight and just, like, shuffling around your pieces to suddenly, okay, like, I'm down 2 pawns. But am I even worse here? Who's actually doing better in this endgame? So I thought it was me. I mean, you can guess that on any position that I think I'm winning, but... yeah, so it's, like, equal. Even with best play, it's, like, slightly better for black, but in a practical sense, I think this is much, much harder for black to play. It's kind of like a good knight versus bad bishop endgame, but I'm also down 2 pawns. So my opponent goes bishop h4, defending the pawn. Okay, there's only one good move in this position for white, so I'll give you some time to think. If you don't play accurately, you will lose here. Fortunately, I think the moves kind of flow in a pretty obvious way, at least if you studied some endgames. Yes, whatever you said to c7, that's correct. Yeah, knight c7, of course, you have to, because knights are short-range pieces, you have to work with threats to, like, elongate your reach, so your opponent is always responding. And that way, the knight, because it, you know, like, it can reach with forks, it's actually, like, kind of a long-range piece in the endgame. And also, normally bishops are better than knights in endgames where there's pawns on both sides of the board. But all of his pawns are, like, so disconnected and clumsy. So knight c7, this pawn is impossible to defend. He goes a6, which is smart, because it's better to keep my knight, like, as far away as possible, and not making threats if you have to give up a pawn. Like, allowing me to take the b pawn would be pretty bad, I think. Maybe. That's what I'm assuming. So I can also go after this pawn next, and, like, I'm just, like, gonna clean up everything. So a6 is smart. Knight takes. Opponent goes d5. I'll give you time again to think, because this is... I think there are two good moves here, but I like mine better for a specific reason. Yeah, what happens if I take? Why is he offering me that pawn? We'll have to do some shapes and colors to really make all this make sense. Need to KH the to castle. So here were my candidate moves. I thought that either I would, take the pawn. Actually, that was my only candidate move. I didn't like anything else. Like, if I can justify taking a pawn rather than not taking a pawn, I'm gonna take the fucking pawn, right? I think the only other thing that's reasonable would be like knight c7, but it's overly complicating things for no reason. So we take, and after e4, I'm able to play knight c5, attacking the pawn, forcing e3. And now the question is, where do I put the knight? How do I restrict his king? How to not have okay, so like pair of isolated passed pawns. I've been talking a lot about this a lot lately. Thank you for the Twitch Prime. Farabor. Farabor. Probably one of those. Okay, so yeah, so why is knight c5 bad right away? Knight c5 right away. Like, okay, your point is you have a fork, right? Like, this is not working due to the fact that you just win the pawn back immediately. And this might be more enticing because your pawn is like further back and harder to attack, like less overextended. But what if I don't do that? What if I like play king e7 and I'm threatening this move still? And then in this case, if you take, your knight c7 is not on the table. It's my turn again. I go king d6. I fork your dudes. And now I'm the one with an extra pass pawn, and you don't even have counterplay. It's looking scary here. This is looking really bad. But this also is good because it shows the importance of not letting black's king get active. So we must restrict and create counterplay. Okay, I'm gonna quickly woman-splain some pawn endgames because like everyone should know this stuff and almost no one does. If we ignore everything else on the board and we just look at the pawns. A pair of isolated pass pawns are kind of cool. They're kind of different from connected pass pawns in the sense that they can protect each other, in the sense that like connected pass pawns, if you take the backward pawn, you're outside of the square of the forward pawn and the pawn goes. Something similar can happen with these pawns. Well, it's not as direct, but it has to do with the square. So, okay, common square you determine by the more backward pawn you draw, and you instead of stopping at the back rank, it's not this. That this is the square of the pawn, but the common square is this. You stop at the second pawn. I'm gonna just throw in some fun facts. If the common square reaches the end of the board, the pawns will promote without king help. In a king and pawn endgame scenario, not when there's pieces on the board. If they do not, you then look at how many files apart they are to determine whether or not they can stay alive without king help. And if it's 1 or 3 files apart, the pawns will stay alive. If it's 2 files apart, the king will capture both. So like keep all this in mind. Like if shenanigans happen, it's very possible that like in this position, if you ignore everything else, if it's black's turn and black goes here, the common square changes to this, and suddenly the pawns promote without king help. So this is like a really dangerous setup. It's nothing to like scoff at all. It's almost like trousers if you've seen like a pair of isolated pass pawns versus one bishop where the bishop can't catch both. It's like that, but with the king closer together. So all of that to say, opponent goes e3, and suddenly like if there were no other factors on the board, I would be completely lost. But I have my beautiful little horsey. And I need to organize the horse in a way to help me stop these pawns. And there's only one move that doesn't lose here. So we could think backwards, like what would be an optimal square for the knight to be on? Like, everyone's saying knight e6. Yes, knight e6 kind of needs to be used to get a tempo on the king. And then after king e7, the question is, do you go knight d4 or do you go knight c4? Or f4. I'm I'm dyslexic. Thank you for the 10 gift subs, Merlin. Someone named EG Cosmo got one. They both look really good to me. But one is 0.1 better, and that's the one I played, and I had a reason for it. God, I'm annoying. So there's so many cool shapes and colors going on right now. Let's first, okay, so knight f4. Let's examine this one first. Like, immediately you're kind of making this threat. Here's an issue, though. So I'm just gonna, like, play devil's advocate here. Say it's white's turn again here. Or maybe here. Like, if you go after the knight, you actually are losing, again, because the pawns are so powerful alone. They're creating a wall. And if the knight gets too far away, the king can't stop the pawns. The knight has to stop the pawns. So you can't, like, go kick this bishop away to try to take. Like, he's not going to move the bishop away and then you take and you're in the square. No. He's just going to push the pawn. So you have to be careful. That was kind of unrelated to these two. But one thing about this is that, okay, I'm stopping this pawn from advancing. But I'm not really doing anything else, interestingly. It does look like I'm making another threat, but I'm not because my knight will be too far away to stop e2. Knight d4, on the other hand, also stops this. But it threatens this in a way where I'm actually a lot closer. So there's like this fork going on. I'm also attacking this pawn. This pawn is under attack. And I'm stopping the king from getting closer. Because if you approach my pawn, now this does work. Because after push, the knight gets back in time. So this is like the key difference. And while it only adds 0.1 advantage to play knight d4 rather than knight f4, practically, I feel it won me the game. Because now it's really hard for black to find a move. Because this is a threat. So it's black to play now. It's really hard for black to make any progress. And I just love that I'm, like, restricting his king because of tactics. And it's also cool because the knight here, it's not directly threatening any of these pawns, but it's doing a better job because of the shapes and colors. So, okay, so someone says knight f4 is good because you can play king h3 and you're stopping both pawns. That is true, and this would definitely secure you a draw. But I think that if you're going to play for a win, this is the way. Like I said, this is like 0.1 better. So it actually makes 0 difference. But in practical play, I think it's a much bigger difference. Because immediately my opponent blundered here. So like if he makes a waiting move, if he just moves his king, I can't actually take this pawn, again, because of e2. So that's like pretty annoying. King f3 would be played next, and I'm still not threatening to take here, because again, if like a waiting move is played here, g2, in both, he could push either pawn, because when he pushes here, the bishop is like keeping a wall, and then also he could push this pawn for the same reason. This would be a bad waiting move, however, because of the fork, but you know what I mean. But it's like becoming harder and harder, because now if he goes here, I take here with check, and then I go back. If he goes here, I go here. He can't go forward for the same reasons. If he goes backward, like, I take and I play knight f3, and I'm winning. 0.1 better, yes. So, like, you can see how you can fall apart really, really quickly here. In fact, basically the only way to not lose for black now is to either sacrifice the e-pawn or play this move, which, you know, makes sense, kind of. So he didn't do any of that, but, like, that's what he should do. My opponent played the move bishop f6, which loses on the spot. But how? How exactly? You have to be exact. I like endgames. The dog's not in here anymore, so I don't have to worry about running over his dog paws. Gobble. Gobble what? Like, knight f5 is definitely like, okay, come on, like, that's gotta be the thing, because it attacks all of the things, it's check, and it prevents him from going forward, and he's blocked from going forward because his bishop is on a stupid square. It goes king d7. But here, there's only one winning move. And it's not like that complicated, but it's a good example of how you can't just assume that you can kind of do anything and win. You have to always be like on guard. On guard. So knight g3 will not work. Because after e2, if I try to, like, for some reason play this move and do it with the king, bishop h4 and I actually lose. Because I'll be down a piece. So I have to play knight takes e2. And then after king d6, if I go knight f4 to defend my pawn, I think that I can be, like, pretty easily kicked away. And then, like, I don't have enough counter... Like, I mean, I don't have enough to play for a win here. Like, it's gonna be 3v2. He's gonna have a bishop. Like, it's a draw. So he can, like, sacrifice his pawns and, like, use them to put my knight on, like, suboptimal squares. So using that knowledge, okay, like, we'll see why knight takes e3 also doesn't work. Bishop e5 now, and it's gonna end up the same scenario. We allowed him to place his bishop on, like, basically the correct square, and if I have to trade my knight off for this pawn, he's gonna win this pawn. It's gonna be 3v2. Maybe I can still, like, do something. Maybe he won't even, you know, take back. He'll just, once the knight is away, he'll take here, and then he probably, he should keep the minor pieces on. But, so if it's worth sacrificing, like, both his pawns to put my knight on a bad square, that means my knight's on a really good square right now, because it's restricting his king. So king takes g3 is the only winning move. We must keep the knight here, where it's keeping the king almost in a box. And he goes e2 here, king f2. Now he tries b4. He offered me a draw here, and I said, I'll think about it. And I played c takes b4. Bishop takes b2. King takes. Bishop a3. b5. King c7. And now the cherry on top, the move that made my opponent cry. Knight e3. Absolutely brutal position. He can't even make a threat, because again, the knight is just too godly. And once he realized he couldn't even continue to try here, he broke down and started crying. And he went king b6. And I, you know, credit where credit's due, this is an interesting way to try to play for a draw, leaving me with a knight and a rook pawn. However, even though it's a rook pawn, having that extra knight for tempo makes it so I can win pretty easily. My opponent did play till mate. And I don't know how good my technique was here. I went queen c6 and then here. And then here, and queen c8 is pretty mean. I should have gone here, honestly. But my opponent refused to shake my hand. That hasn't happened to me, like, almost ever, but my opponent would not shake my hand after this game. My opponent was 10 years old, he was 2162 USCF, and he was not happy with the result of this game. And it's like, I get it, like, I know he was, like, better most of the game, but I don't think that, like, the kid before this, he shouldn't have shaken my hand, and he did. But this game, I don't know, he wasn't winning enough to justify not shaking my hand. Not playing till mate and also not shaking your hand is crazy. Yeah, well, my rating at the time was 1914, and then post-tournament it was like 2030 something. But, like, it's not my fault that you're a kid and you haven't done endgames or have any experience, and that you only study openings and tactics, and if your attack doesn't work, then you can't, like, beat me. That's not my fault. I'm just, like, what do you want from me? Am I supposed to just, like, not play? I don't know. Never give Zefcat a 0.1 advantage. Okay, but if we look at the rest of these games, if you did give me an advantage in any one of these games, I did not let it go. And in fact, like, I just, like, kind of, like, slowly just, like, you know? If you give me an advantage, I will probably win the game. It's just that I, you know, the openings were picked by ChatGPT, and, everyone knows openings, and I don't. Maybe I'll even become one of these Chess 960 people, where I'm like, you know? GM win? Probably never.